Good morning, friends. How are you? I hope you are having a great Friday already and that you are ready for the weekend, whatever that looks like for you. For those of us who are self-employed, typically weekends are just another day. But if you have the weekend off, you're going to go out and do something fun. I hope you have a great time and enjoy yourself. In fact, drop a message in the comments. Let me know what you're doing. I'd love to hear what's going on this weekend and what's happening. When I started doing this chapter by chapter, we're calling it a Bible study, but really it's more of a devotional time, just time to kind of communicate some perspective on each chapter. I didn't really know what this whole thing was going to look like, and honestly, I still don't. I don't know what happens, but I wanted to share something with you because I think it's a principle that we need to understand if we're going to achieve financial independence. You see, the biggest thing that prevents anybody from doing anything is not starting. Sometimes if you don't ever take that first step, then you don't have any way to move forward. And you can sit there and read about it, you can think about it, you can talk about it, but until you do something, even if it's something you change, you have to get started somewhere. Now, when I started the YouTube channel, I didn't really know what I was going to put on there. And it wasn't because I didn't know what content I had there. In fact, some of the content that I have so much of it, I don't know where to start. And so I started here. I started with a chapter by chapter assessment of the Bible because I figured that would give us a good foundation to work off of. Now, this morning I got up, and what most people don't know is I get up around 3 o'clock in the morning to start these times together. And I take them pretty serious. I want to dig in and make sure I understand what I'm talking about and understand the context of the scripture. And I read it over and over and over again. And I make sure that that it's all been edited and everything's okay. And sometimes I'm having to catch up on things. But I get up around 3 o'clock and I did that this morning. And I got ready for Genesis chapter 11 and I started reading through it. And I intended to just kind of breeze past some of the story of Babel. And as I did that, I started looking at it, and there was something that jumped out at me. It says in the story of Babel, in the beginning of Genesis chapter 11, that basically, if you remember in Genesis chapter 10, Noah left. And he had his kids there, and they got off the boat, and they were told, okay, go out and expand and be blessed, multiply, and be fruitful. And so they went out. Well, that's where Genesis 11 picks up. Okay, so they go out and they try and find a place to really find a home, and they find it in the plains, and they start to build this city. And as they build this city, they start making it out of bricks, and they start making it out of the materials that they have, and it starts to build this incredible city. And God looks down at them and says, wow, they are really in sync and they're doing everything together. And if they continue doing that and we don't do something about it, then there's going to be a problem. They can do anything they want. Well, why is that a problem? Well, he confused them. He confused their language. And that hit me, and I went, well, I'm just going to probably skim over that and not think about it. But the problem is this. It's really important for us to understand this principle. We need to understand why God might try to confuse us sometimes or might not allow us to understand something. I'm going to dig deep into that tomorrow in a very short period of time. And so I want to take some extra time today. I don't know if you know this, but the difference between a really good speaker and somebody who's just coming off the cuff, which is really what I'm doing for the most part in the mornings, is I don't have time to put together a big elaborate speaking deal. They say that if you want me to speak for 5 minutes, give me a couple of weeks to prepare. And if you want me to speak for a couple hours, I'm ready right now. And so Generally, when you start looking at that, you have to prepare. And so if you've got a pastor that's a really good speaker, he prepares. If you have another speaker, he prepares. In fact, the typical industry standard is about 1 hour of preparation time for every 1 minute that you talk. Well, I don't have 15 to 20 hours in the day to prepare for the next day and do everything else that I have to do. And so that's where that kind of comes into play. But this is really important. And I'm going to spend the entire day preparing for tomorrow morning to try and be succinct in what's happening. But I want to give you a quick story, and then I want to kind of go over, I want us to read Genesis chapter 11 today so that when we come back tomorrow, we're on the same page. Do you remember Coca-Cola? Yeah, you've probably heard of Coca-Cola. In fact, depending on where you're from and what part of the country, you may just call it cola, you may call it soda, you may call it whatever you call it. But in the South where I'm from, everything's a Coke. Hey, you want a Coke? Well, that's just the way it is. That was the brand. And originally, the original Coca-Cola was so good that everybody wanted to copy it and be part of it. Well, Coca-Cola had a formula, and their formula was that they set everything up into silos, into little individual areas. And those silos allowed for them to make this part over here and this part over here and this part over here. And in fact, nobody knew all the ingredients. It was part of their formula. They didn't know what the ingredients were. They didn't know how it was prepared. They only knew their part. And because of that, they were able to do something incredible. Well, over time, eventually somebody got really smart and decided, you know what, let's change this thing up and let's change the recipe and we'll call it New Coke. And so New Coke came along and it went out and nobody liked it. Well, the problem was nobody knew the old formula because it had been split up so much. When you start thinking about things, I come back to how many times do we want to know the whole formula, but we don't? Sometimes we have our formula for our product that we have personally. And so it's our business, it's our employment, it's our job, it's whatever it is. But then the bigger picture is the kingdom philosophy. And we're not designed to know all of the pieces in the kingdom. We're designed to fulfill our place. Now, if you don't fulfill your place and you don't fulfill your calling and your purpose, and I don't, well, then there's going to be gaps in that kingdom. And so we have to be able to find out what our purpose is and what our place is to be able to fulfill the entire recipe. Does that make sense? So as we get into Genesis chapter 11, I want to explain to you some perspective that I had. You see, I have a tendency to be very vocal. I'm very direct, and sometimes that rubs people wrong. It's also the thing that's made me a lot of money. It's the thing that has made me successful, is the ability to speak truth into areas that people don't want to acknowledge or don't want to agree with. It's why I'm good at coaching. It's why I'm good at mentoring, because I'll look into a situation and I will be able to see where the opportunities are, and I'll tell you. Now, some people like that, some people don't, but if you're going to get better, you need somebody that's willing to do that. Now, the flip side of that is that it causes some problems at other times when it's not used properly, right? And there are times where I know this is a weakness. It's a strength for me, but it's also a weakness, and it's a hole. And this morning, and really for the past several weeks, one of the things I've just been trying to figure out how to communicate and what's going on and how to talk and how to overcome these objections and how to deal with the massive education challenge that's in front of me of where people are on the wrong track. And when you start thinking about that, you say, how do I overcome that without rubbing people completely wrong? How do I overcome that without the challenges? And I don't know the answer to that. All I know to do is speak the truth. But that's what I've been praying. And the problem that I have sometimes is that not only am I very strong in that with everybody around me, but I'm also that way with God sometimes. And this morning, I felt like God told me this: be quick to listen and slow to speak. Now, I don't know if you've ever had that said to you or whatever, but it's something that I took to heart this morning, because the message that I feel like you want to, or that you need to hear, and that we need to hear, and we need to internalize if we're going to achieve financial freedom and financial independence, is really something that is too big for 15 minutes. So I've got to really zero in on it, but it's important. It's not a race to see how quickly I can get through each chapter and move on to the next chapter. It's a marathon for us to make that happen. Now, that's a principle that I felt like I needed to share with you. As we continue to be quick to listen and slow to speak, we can understand not only other perspectives around us, but we can also be able to identify who we want to listen to and who we don't. Who is saying something that's in line with our best interest and who's not. That's where we're going. That's what's happening. If you're new to me and we're just connecting, me be the first to welcome you to Middle Class Millionaire University. My name's Joe Sugg, and I'm the Bible-believing, freedom-seeking, Jeep-driving founder of Middle Class Millionaire, where our mission is to educate and empower entrepreneurial-minded, faith-focused, purpose-driven people to achieve financial independence so that they may pursue their God-given passion instead of a life-sucking paycheck. As we move forward into the scripture today and what's happening, I want you to know one more thing about who I am. I'm your friend. Listen, I've made mistakes as much as anybody else. I've had successes like many people dream of. Both have taught me a lot of lessons. And in those lessons, there's a sense of purpose that I need to be able to share those with whoever is interested in hearing them. So I thank you for being with me, and thank you for going along this journey with me. It really does mean a lot, not only for me, but I believe that it gives me some purpose in hoping to help you. So if there's something else I can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out. Here we go. So let's go ahead and jump into Genesis chapter 11. It's about 3 minutes, as most chapters are. And as we understand the 3 minutes, then tomorrow morning, make sure you're back with me. If you're out doing something tomorrow morning when I come on, make sure you come back and like the page and go to the YouTube page and subscribe there, whatever you need to do. But make sure you come back, because tomorrow is going to be something you don't want to miss.
Genesis chapter 11. Now all the earth used the same language and the same words. And it came about, as they journeyed east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Then they said to one another, "Come, let's make bricks and fire them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. And they said, "Come, let's build ourselves a city, and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let's make a name for ourselves, otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of all the earth." Now the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they have started to do. And now nothing which they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down." And there confused their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there, over the face of all the earth. And they stopped building the city. Therefore it was named Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. These are the records of the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he fathered Arpachshad, 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived 500 years after he fathered Arpachshad. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Arpachshad lived 35 years and fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived 403 years after he fathered Shelah. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Shelah lived 30 years and fathered Eber. And Shelah lived for 103 years after he fathered Eber. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years and fathered Peleg. And Eber lived for 130 years after he fathered Peleg. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Peleg lived 30 years and fathered Reu. And Peleg lived 109 years after he fathered Reu. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Reu lived 32 years and fathered Srug. And Reu lived 107 years after he fathered Srug. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Srug lived 30 years and fathered Nahor. And Srug lived 100 years after he fathered Nahor. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years and fathered Terah. And Nahor lived 119 years after he fathered Terah. And he fathered other sons and daughters. Terah lived 70 years and fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the records of the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died during the lifetime of his father Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Sarai was unable to conceive. She did not have a child. Now Terah took his son Abram, and Lot the son of Haran, his grandson, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife. And they departed together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And they went as far as Haran and settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.